Welcome to Real Estate and Murder, a podcast about real estate and murder.
I am Amy Brockbank.
And I am Sarah Brager. We are both licensed real estate agents in the state of Utah who have a common fascination with true crime.
We are here to tell you stories of murder amongst the real estate community. It might be an agent, it might be a client, it might be an undetected serial killer.
When it comes to real estate crimes, some are predators and some are prey.
We just want to issue a trigger warning. The content of these cases can be difficult to hear from time to time, and please listen with care.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Real Estate and Murder, our podcast about real estate and murder.
Yeah.
Here we are. We have another story to bring you today. And Amy, I just have to mention before we jump into this again, we're doing another 9 a.m. recording.
Unknowingly. It's just as how it has worked out in the last few weeks in the studio.
It's going to be great, though. We have a very complex story to tell today, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, I feel like it's one of those stories where not much is known about the victim except for the crime.
Yeah.
Which is super unfortunate.
It is. And we'll totally get into all of those, details or lack thereof. But why don't you tell me what you've done in real estate this week before we jump in?
Just the same old. So what about you? I know you had a really exciting week in real estate.
Yeah, I had a good week. I helped buyers close on a home here in Salt Lake. It was a very smooth process. There were a couple of bumps and hiccups in the transaction, as there always are, but myself and the other agent both worked really closely together as a team, which is very important to a successful transaction, right?
Yeah.
And we were able to get everybody what they wanted. My buyers are walking into a home with equity in it already, so they're thrilled. We were able to negotiate for all of their closing costs to be covered, so they're thrilled. And the seller's happy to have the deal done. So it was an excellent closing and very exciting to get to that final day where you get to hand the buyers the keys and say, good job, you survived, this process, and here's your reward. So
yeah, I think this transaction, because there was a lot of particular bumps in the road for you, gave all of us agents, as we were talking things through, right? Because we always, I'll bounce ideas off you, you bounce ideas off me. We have other agents we bounce ideas off of. But I think it was a good lesson to be if you have some sort of inspection or something done, get information from an actual person that's going to have to go in and do the repairs or because the inspectors sometimes will make a big deal or not a big deal about something that ends up being. And so we have to go in and hire the right professional to come in and give us their.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to give a little bit of clarity, this is just an older home. It was a home built in the early 1900s. And those homes are, even if they've been beautifully restored, are always going to have some type of complication to them. And so this transaction involved a contractor, a structural engineer, lots of additional testing, which, is always a great learning process or relearning process, because we go through that all the time as agents.
Yeah.
But for my buyers, it was a great learning process for them. So it was a good week. So real estate's been good.
Oh, God.
Okay, well, Amy, let's jump into the story. Let's talk about our location here. Today, the topic of our story is a beautiful sweetheart of a realtor. Her name was Carolyn Horton Rogers, but we'll refer to her as Carolyn or Carolyn Rogers.
Yeah.
And she was actually murdered all the way back in the 1990s. So we're jumping back a little bit in time here. But as a part of our storytelling, we always get the local market stats for today for the area in which our crime took place. So we are going over to Roanoke, Virginia. And Amy, I'm going to tell you just really quickly where Roanoke is actually located on the map so that our listeners know kind of the area we're in here.
Okay.
So from Roanoke to Washington, D.C. is 242 miles. So about 3 hours and 45 minutes in traffic. Now, that was kind of my first question was, what's the proximity to D.C.?
Yeah.
Because we know as realtors, on the East Coast in those types of areas, the closer proximity you get to those major hubs like D.C., New York, the increase of real estate value happens very quickly.
Yeah, it's really expensive in these bigger cities to live. So a lot of people that work and have to commute in will find suburbs outside. But Roanoke County is probably a little far for those communities.
Yes, it's a little far for that, but I wanted to know what the proximity to the biggest city nearby is. And the Roanoke region is about 300 miles in from the coast of Virginia and about 250 miles southwest of Washington, D.C. And we're actually only about 50 miles north of the state border with North Carolina.
Okay.
So that's where we're at.
Okay.
All right. So now why don't you share the local market stats with us? You've got that info.
I do. This time we did a little different. We try to narrow it down into the city. But because of differing information that we were getting for research, we decided to just do Roanoke County. And so this data is from just in October of this year. So it's pretty fairly recent data. But we have the median days on market. So the average days on market is 50 days. The sell to list price is 100%.
That's amazing, actually.
So these agents are killing it with this is what a house will go for and this is what it's selling for.
Mm-hmm.
The median list price has been trending down for year over year, meaning that what it started with in January has kind of trended down. Which is what we see in a lot of areas in fourth quarter. That's not uncommon.
Right.
And so right now the median list price is around $350. And for those that are wanting to know the price per square foot, it's about $175 price per square foot. And then just for the climate report stats, like Roanoke is a pretty safe area as far as like extreme weather. The flood factor is moderate, fire factor is moderate, wind factor is minor, heat factor is major. But we talked about this on the last podcast. Like when we think of heat factor, we're thinking like me and you are both thinking Tucson,
Right.
Las Vegas, like things like that. But so I don't really know what heat factor looks like in Virginia, but it's 87% of properties are at a major risk of heat over the next 30 years. But other than that, like it's a pretty
like average American suburb community
where
county.
It's not like obviously in Tornado Alley or high risks of flooding or fire. And it's a pretty safe area to kind of be in for environmental factors, I guess we'll say.
Cool. Okay. So actually like really healthy real estate stats.
Yeah.
Coming out of that location. So good for you if you live there. All right. So Amy, let's jump into our story now that we know where we are and what we're doing. So let's go all the way back to the week of July 23rd, 1998. This is the week we're in.
Okay.
And a man named Danny King is being prepared for execution. He's set to die by lethal injection this week. And he tells the prison staff, once again, they're going to be executing someone who is innocent. And what's going to be buried with me is the truth, Danny King said. That's a direct quote.
Okay.
So up until the week of his execution, he is claiming innocence and that the truth will die with him if they execute him. So, and all the way up until the same day, up until 4 or 5 hours before the execution is set, Governor Jim Gilmore is debating back and forth on Danny King's clemency petition.
Yeah, and we were talking about like high stakes situations earlier today. And like this would be for both sides, right? This would be so you're down to the wire. Like
So
what's
tense.
the decision going to be like pacing? Like this would be a very stressful situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we're all the way down to the wire, truly, with Danny King. Now, a part of this clemency petition actually included affidavits from 2 different jurors who were reporting that they were having second thoughts about Danny King being guilty of the final act of death for Carolyn Rogers. So imagine now we have a situation where the jurors are doubting what happened in the trial.
Well, and we should tell our audience that if one juror is against the death penalty in the state of Virginia at the time, we don't know what the laws are right now, but at the time of a conviction, Danny King's conviction, if one juror would have been against the death penalty, he wouldn't have been sentenced to death.
Right.
And so the fact that there's two that have submitted statements to the governor saying that they are opposed to it now, like they just needed one at the time of trial.
What a wrench in the whole situation to be thrown in last minute here and up until hours before the execution is set.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about why Danny's in this position at all. Let's tell the story. So let's go back to October 11th of 1990. So only 8 years prior to the execution.
Which is pretty quick for
Extremely quick.
For an execution, because most people sit on death row for what feels like an eternity.
20 years, 18 years. We hear that a lot, which a lot of that is due to the appeal process, right? Which we'll talk a little bit about today, but it's October 11th, 1990. We know we're in Roanoke, Virginia. A realtor by the name of Carolyn Rogers is almost done with her workday, but she has one more showing to do with a client she has never met. So this is towards the end of her workday. Now, Amy, why don't you tell us what we do know about Carolyn? Like we mentioned, unfortunately, in this case, there's so little that we know about Carolyn's personal life. We have, the basics and the details, but think back to a time, let's go in the way, way back time machine to before social media, before, we started really living our lives kind of in the public eye the way that we do now. And so the information that we have on Carolyn really is just pretty basic. We wish we knew more, and we want to tell her story with respect and honor her story. But let's go over what we do know.
Yeah, which isn't a lot. I mean, we both try to research and get to know, and I know that that's one of my big things is I want to get to know the person, because so much that's out there it's like their life only started when they died, which is unfortunate. But there isn't a lot of information out there on Carolyn, unfortunately. She was born on May 2nd, 1935 in Wendell, Wake, North Carolina. Hope I'm saying that correctly. And her parents were Esmond Horton and Maggie. And it looks like she was married before, because she had gone by the name of Carolyn Horton Jeffers. And she actually has 2 kids, and one of them, the last name is a different last name, but she could be married, so I don't know. But anyway, the daughter. But she has 2 kids, Jerry and Carlton. And when she was 31, she married a man named Sion Chester Rogers Jr., and they were married on May 15th, 1966, in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so she stayed in the area after she was married, and she was really only like 55 when she passed away, when she was murdered.
So they were married for, what is that, about 24 years, 1990 to, and they were married in 66, right? So they did have, a long life together, 2 beautiful children. If you do look up this case to research more on it, you'll see we do have one photo, at least one consistent one we could find of Carolyn. And she has like that classic kind of regal look. Her hair is curled and pulled back like tight and high. And she definitely looks like what you would kind of picture a businesswoman, a real estate agent in this time period to look 90s, like, right? Yeah, she's classically very beautiful, and it seems like she had a wonderful home life and a business life. So she actually was a real estate agent for a brokerage by the name of Maston, Kirkland, and Balling. And so I did just a quick search to see if I could find anything out about the brokerage she worked for. And this brokerage is still around and operating in real estate today.
Yeah, it was founded in 1973.
Yeah. So, and they kind of have shortened, they go by the moniker or whatever, MKB Realtors. So if you look them up, it was founded in 1973, like Amy said, by Lee Maston, Betty Kirkland, a woman, and Chan Balling. I do not know anything else about those three people, except that they founded this brokerage that is still in existence today. And this group has now grown. It's a huge group. They say on their website that they have 130 associates. They show 64 team member agent photos. So they're a really large team that services several areas in Virginia and looking like maybe down into North Carolina.
And they're still actively practicing today. So
yeah, there's it's a well-established brokerage, which we can assume then would have also been well-established, and this brokerage had a reputable name when Carolyn was an agent for them. So that's what we do know, a little bit about her personal life and her professional life. So it's October 11th, and Carolyn does not return home or appear back at her office. And it's around 5 p.m. and her son and her coworkers are starting to get a little worried about her because she hasn't come back. Now, remember, we're in 1990, so this is likely before a time that she was carrying a cell phone, right? Some people had cell phones, but it wasn't common. And so in order to go track someone down, you had to go on foot, right? You had to go find them. So the son and the coworkers know that Carolyn has a listing, or that she's showing this house. It's a vacant house. So they go to this house and her car is not there. Her vehicle's not there. But they enter the house anyway. And unfortunately, they find in the basement of the home that Carolyn was laying face down in a large pool of blood. She had been brutally beaten, choked, stomped on, and stabbed. So this was
a horrific
murder, very violent.
Which I'll just say, like, good for them for going in, because not that I'm coming for my husband, but if he drives by somewhere and my car's not there, I don't know that he would have gone in to check.
Sure. That's logical nowadays, right?
Yeah, I think he would have been like, okay, she's not here. Like, let's see where else she could be.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. So a ring, her wedding ring actually, and an earring had been forcefully removed from her body, along with some other jewelry. That's all that's noted. We don't know what jewelry, but this was obviously a horrific scene. And police are called immediately, kind of like the case that we discussed last week with Fern Holbrook. I have to give it to these police officers and detectives who handle this case, because it goes very quickly.
Yeah.
And well, all things considered, whatever that means.
Yeah. Well, we often hear about criminals making mistakes, or, or police not being able to find anything. It just feels like it's like one extreme or the other.
It does feel like that, kind of, in our storytelling and in our research.
Yeah, they either don't know anything or they find it really quickly.
That's so true. Fortunately, in this case, we have the latter here. So police are searching, and they know they need to go find Carolyn's vehicle because it's not at the home. And Carolyn is. So what happened? They do find they're able to quickly enough locate her vehicle, which was parked at a mall not too far away. I have the name of the mall here, but I'm looking at my handwritten notes. And again, it was 7 a.m. writing these notes, so I'm not even sure I can read my own notes. But her vehicle is found nearby at a mall. And, Tanglewood Mall. So in the Tanglewood Mall parking lot. Okay. Now, Amy, this is going to be a little bit of a aside here, but I just want to note that this case actually has a lot of similarities to other stories that we've told.
Oh, as I was researching, I was like, oh gosh, this sounds like this person. This sounds like this person. This sounds like...
Right.
Yeah.
So just in this moment, I'll just reference that Mike Emmer, a murder that we covered earlier on in the season, his vehicle was also not found at the home that he was at, but found nearby in a mall parking lot.
Well, even Ann Nelson, if you guys know Ann Nelson's case from way back, season 1, like, This is very similar to Ann Nelson's.
And to Lindsay Buziak in
Yeah.
a way, which we'll get to the similarities there. But what I'm getting at is the home was vacant, which we see in a lot of these stories, and then vehicle was found somewhere else. Now, police instantly search the vehicle and process it. And at the same time that all of this is going on, they're able to find out that the same day of the murder, 3 checks were forged and drawn out of Carolyn's account and were cashed at local Roanoke banks.
Oh my gosh. Which banks have security footage, even in the night?
They do. I don't know the quality of such, but on the same afternoon, also, her wedding ring is pawned at a local pawn shop.
Which also has security footage.
Well, we would hope. I don't know about back then.
Do.
I'm sure now, look at how many cases, like crime cases, pawn shops are involved in. But either way, now it's pretty evident that this murder was opportunistic and was a robbery because checks are cashed immediately, jewelry is pawned immediately, right? So police are still processing all of this evidence, and they find a notebook or notepad in Carolyn's vehicle. And this notepad, interestingly enough, has Carolyn's name and number and the address of the listing, as well as a couple other of agents.
Yeah, which is similar to Lindsay Buziak's state planner.
So there's no way, though, that Carolyn would have written down her own name and address. This is handwritten.
I guess so.
So police take this notepad, they process it.
Well, you said has her name on it. I assumed it was like stationery that had like Carolyn's real estate.
Handwritten names on it.
Interesting.
And the names of there's 2 other women written on this notepad with their names, phone number, and addresses of listings that they currently had. The other 2 women are local real estate agent Barbara Fogel and local real estate agent Cheryl Ham.
Okay. So crimes of opportunity.
So this notepad has these names on it. And of course, police are going to call the other 2 women to see if they had any contact, what's going on here. And it turns out that Barbara Fogel and her secretary, their ears instantly perk up. They remember the morning of of Carolyn's murder, they also received a phone call from a stranger, a woman by the name of Becky Keaton, who was wanting to see a listing, the same listing that's written on this notepad.
Oh my goodness.
So we're starting to put together some pieces here.
Why didn't they show the house?
Well, Carolyn's name was at the top of the list.
But they got the phone call.
Or maybe not at the top of the list. Maybe Barbara's was. Barbara and Carolyn both received a phone call. Barbara actually booked an appointment. I'm sorry, I just said Barbara. Back it up 1 second. Take it back. It's too early in the morning. Carolyn actually booked the appointment.
Okay.
So Barbara was out of the office when the phone call came in.
Oh, so her receptionist took the call.
Her receptionist took the call and a message and wrote it down. But that morning, Barbara was already out showing homes to clients, so she didn't receive the message. And by the afternoon, Carolyn had already taken the appointment.
I see.
Cheryl Ham never received a phone call.
Huh.
And so one would assume they called Barbara, weren't able to get a hold of her, called Carolyn, confirmed an appointment.
Interesting.
So this notepad is taken into evidence, of course. This is the secret. It holds the key here. And sure enough, it holds the key, which is a fingerprint.
Oh my gosh.
And this fingerprint is easy to identify because police can quickly tie it to a woman by the name of Becky Hodges King.
So she basically used her real name.
So
you're going to commit a crime. You're going to leave a message with the receptionist, but you're going to actually give them most of your real name.
So Becky uses the name Becky Keaton when she calls both of these.
Yeah.
So she modified it very minimally. But this fingerprint, luckily, is in the police database because she has been charged with petty crimes previously to this.
Oh my gosh.
So thankfully, her fingerprint is already in the system. Otherwise, truly, I don't know if this murder would have been solved or gotten as far as it did.
Yeah.
Right? Because...
Or as quickly. I guess we'll say
Or as quickly. Yeah, because she literally handed them evidence on a platter. She left her notepad in Carolyn's car with her fingerprint on it.
Oh my gosh.
So police put out an APB warrant. We're looking for her. We are going on the move here. We are going to go find Becky King. Now, what they do know about Becky King is that she is married, I'll say married lightly, to a man named Danny King. And I say lightly because Danny and Becky entered into a bigamous marriage in January of 1989, the year before.
Because he was already married.
Because he was already married.
Oh my gosh, this man.
So now we've tied in Becky King to Danny King, right? Now we've brought it full circle and police are going on the hunt. They've got to find this couple.
Oh my gosh.
So again, like fortunately, because the police worked so quickly and got this evidence back so quickly, they're able to actually find and arrest Danny and Becky not too long after that. Let me find the date here. My notes are all over, but I believe it's October 18th or 19th. It's like one of the articles says 8 days later. So that they're able to find, pull over Becky and Danny in a stolen vehicle in Ohio. So they'd crossed the state line. They're on the run and they're headed west, essentially. So they immediately arrest the two, of course.
Yeah, I love that the states are working together to kind of find, because there was a period of time where
that's true.
States weren't working together or the data was getting glossed. And so for them to be able to say like, hey, we're looking for this vehicle, and for Ohio to be like, oh yeah, we just saw it.
Of course.
Like, that's amazing.
It is amazing. And they've stolen this vehicle, which was actually reported stolen by a dealership just a couple of days before.
My gosh.
Yeah.
They stole it from a dealership and not some like...
And they stole a van. So they stole a van from the dealership. They go on the run, and they're caught just on Interstate 77.
Of course they're caught. Like, the dealership got... If it's they'll get police out there earlier than a private citizen would have.
So police are looking for a stolen vehicle.
No plates or dealer plates or something.
Yep, exactly. And the police pull over the stolen vehicle and surprise, surprise, luckily inside, they find two people that have a warrant out for them. Or
oh my God.
At least Becky did at this time because she's the one with the fingerprint, right?
Yeah.
She's the one that they can trace back because a woman by the name of Becky Keaton called the real estate agents that morning. So they know for sure Becky's involved. Danny was just kind of a bonus find at this time.
I think Danny also had, I could be mistaken, but I think he also had a warrant out for his, he didn't have a warrant out for his arrest, but because of his parole, he wasn't allowed to leave the state. So when they flagged his name, because he's not in the state of Virginia, he also gets arrested for that.
Parole violation. Yeah. Exactly. So he's taken in for a parole violation. Becky is brought in to be charged with murder, and they extradite the couple back to Roanoke County to sit in jail and be charged. And we're talking, this happened within 8 days of the murder taking place. So very fortunately, it was a quick enough process. So where do we go from here? Here's where the story goes kind of bonkers in a way.
Yeah.
Because these two people are now going to go to trial. And eventually, Danny King is charged with murder as well. But initially, it's Becky, right? And so now we have two people charged with a murder, and their stories are going to go in completely different directions.
Yeah.
So, we could, Amy, at this point, if you'd like, take a quick breather, take a break, and in part 2, we can get into the complicated and varying stories that make up this trial and eventually the resolution of this case.
Yeah. Interesting. So
we need to prep a little bit. For the second part, it gets complicated.
Well, and very controversial.
Very controversial.
So our audience should be ready to just start screaming because,
Because here we go.
All right.
Hey, I'll talk to you in a little bit then.
Bye.